Hi, good afternoon and welcome back. My name is Frank Sullivan, here at Digital Craftsman with our technical director, Paul Arick. Paul.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So this week, this series, we're going to be looking at automation. So let's dive right in. What is your understanding of infrastructure automation?
Infrastructure automation is where we've moved from the physical world to the virtual world. We're all used to the idea of machines being virtualized and services running on them being virtualized. But more and more now you're actually able to virtualize the network firewalls, the routers, the actual underlying pieces that make the infrastructure run. You can effectively create them as blocks of code to say I want 3 subnets which are this size, here's the gateway, and places like AWS and Azure will basically set those up for you just to be able to drop your infrastructure into it.
That analogy, the way that you're describing building blocks, is actually quite apt, because when we think about constructing and building the architecture, building a system, you kind of need the tools to be able to move these building blocks around. And I think a large part of automation, certainly the things that we've been discussing, have looked at orchestration and the different types of tools. What are the kinds of tools out there and how do they function?
I think, well, if you look at AWS, taking AWS as an example, if you look at their CloudFormation system, the ability to completely create from scratch the network, the routers, the external IP addresses, being able to automatically attach those IP addresses to virtual machines, to instances that it will roll up, being able to look at, to create a database instance, an RDS database instance, find out its IP address, pour that into a config file which can then be fed into each of the web servers so the web servers know where their databases are. You can, as you say, you can literally build it from nothing all the way up through the structure until you end up with a fully rolled out web farm which knows what its database server is, it knows what its front end IP address is, and it's ready to go within 20 minutes of just pressing the script button. That's what's possible.
And as the theory goes, if you can do it once, you can do it again. How does blueprinting and templating fit into this brave new world, this automated environment?
Well, by templating certain machines, by picking one particular machine type and going, okay, well, here's the operating system. We can go in, we can harden it, we can make sure that all of the different security features are enabled, that we've got a list of known users ready to apply to that machine, that we've made sure that we've turned all the right ports off and all the right ports on. It allows us to then blueprint at the security level, so we can actually take security groups, create a blueprint of what a good security group should look like, so that we know when machines are in this network, they're only allowed access to this service, and this service. And by putting those structures together, by saying, right, well, this is what this section looks like, this is what this section looks like, it allows us to effectively predefine the security roles and security responsibilities of each of those sections, which means that when it comes time to actually putting them together, you effectively, not only are you pre-building your infrastructure, but you know that you're pre-building a secure infrastructure, that you've already had the plans and agreements signed off. And because obviously it's all based in code, it means you can roll that out for live, you can roll it out for UAT, you can roll it out for staging environments, even for a one-off performance testing. You know, you can roll it out, scale it up, do your performance testing and roll it down, and you know that you've rolled out exactly the same instance types, template types that you've got in production, that you've rolled them out for your various tests. It gives you, a lot more reliability.
As I listen to you speak, I hear this is a very clear and very concise operational description of what templating is and how this helps to create a standardized deployment model for security, for the same machines deployed at scale with good practice, best practice in terms of security groups, and letting that scale out across the organization. But whilst this is very much an operational conversation and description that we're having, this is actually much more than that. This is a board level conversation, because you've just described the method by which we encourage compliance with a standardized policy, which is what feeds into the overall strategic goal and the overall vision, which is good governance. Good governance prevents data breaches, it encourages transparency and trust, it improves the resilience of the organization overall.
Absolutely.
But it all starts with these building blocks and how you standardize this approach across the organization. So, automation, it seems, isn't coming to take our jobs, it's actually here to help us do better. I mean, how much...
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that you can do with these building blocks is, I think we've sort of talked about this before, but using tagging within AWS, for example, or tagging within Azure, being able to tag these building blocks with what the security rules are, what security groups it should be in, who's responsible for it, what type of data is held on it. You can roll out hundreds of different instances with all sorts of different tags, and then be able to group them together so that you know collectively where your data is, you know what data is held in the different areas. It also enables you to have that policy, to have that blueprint of where you want, what type of machines you want your data to be held in, what type of data you're holding, and just effectively have a much better overall control of it at the board level, so that you can report to the board and say, yes, well, here's all our data, here's where it individually is, here's who's responsible for each section, here's how we've rolled it out, here's how we've ensured it's secure, here are the different controls that we've got. Everything is laid out in documentation and code, because that's what you're applying every time. And it's not something you apply once and then forget. It is something where you can roll out different versions of the environment, and you know that you're rolling out the same thing every time, so you tweak it as you go, but those tweaks are fed in and only deployed through the code, so that those tweaks, once you've changed it, if you've changed a security model, for example, and you roll it back out again, the next time you roll the code out, you'll be rolling that same tweak out. It's not something you have to think, oh, did I apply that bit? Then has that been changed everywhere? You just put it into your main code and feed it back out.
I mean, I want to pick up on something you said there, a very practical bit of advice for practitioners out there around tagging. You and I have both been privy to the same customer conversations and the same. It's the same story. Why do businesses suck at tagging? You wouldn't have a warehouse without an inventory or a barcode system.
Exactly right.
Is there a way to enforce tagging at the resource level across? Well, certainly we've discussed it for AWS, but is this a vendor-specific thing, or is this just a generally well-held principle that you should tag what you deploy?
It's a generally well-held principle. Certainly within AWS, Google, and Azure, they all give you the ability to do tagging. It's something that's supported on pretty much every type of resource. Being able to make notes around the metadata for a resource is key, really, to be able to use public cloud in the right way. Where they differ slightly is how you can go on and enforce those different things, how you can ensure that the different resources are tagged. For example, within AWS, you can write Lambda functions that will execute as and when you need them. They go off, they will execute, they will introspect through all of your resources, ensure that tags that you've said are compulsory for that type of resource. For example, a database resource needs to have an owner, needs to have a data classification type, it needs to have a data owner, so it can go off, check that every single one of those has got that type of tag, and where it hasn't, it will report back to you and go, this has been deployed on this date, but it doesn't have this tag, this tag, and this tag. And the same kind of facilities and methodologies exist within Azure or AWS. Azure and Google, sorry.
I mean, that's true. It is a consistent approach, and it should be applied across multiple cloud vendors. But I guess it's the tagging that gives context to the log files and the billing data and the things that you're using to report on cost, performance, security.
Absolutely.
All of that feeds into the wider governance piece. I guess moving on from tagging and blueprinting, let's talk about infrastructure as code. What's the difference between infrastructure as code and infrastructure as poetry?
Well, code, if you write things in the right way, then everything can be poetry. But it's about writing things in the right way. It's about making it simple, making it effective, ensuring that you've got good comments in your code, in your layout, so that it's clear to everyone what the different parts of your infrastructure do, what they're used for. And for example, in CloudFormation, you can set up a form so that in order to be able to run the CloudFormation script, you have to know, you can say, right, how many subnets do you want? How many web servers do you want in each subnet? How many database servers do you want? And you can effectively code that in as a form, which when someone runs the CloudFormation script, they'll be asked those questions, and then you put the code in to wherever. So it's about understanding, making sure you're asking the right questions. It's about making sure that the reasoning behind those questions is understood. Why does it matter how many subnets I have? Why does it matter whether I have 5 web servers here or 2 web servers there? And I guess, see, you call it poetry, I call it craftsmanship. It's about how to make sure that your system is functioning efficiently and well, and in my view you can only do that by ensuring that you've got good automation policies, you've got good security policies, and that you effectively bring the whole lot together with a kind of an overview that makes sure that you're doing things in the right way every single time. And that's what automation brings.
I guess my final question now is, if we were to put ourselves in the shoes of a systems administrator, if you think about how your role has evolved from swapping hard disks in and out of a data center, in and out of a rack, to creating deployable blueprints and formation templates and executable code or infrastructure as code that will go and deploy these templated, standardized, beautiful environments. How long did it take you to learn this new way of doing things? And for those who aren't really jumping into cloudland and cloud native thinking, what's their role? What's going to happen to their role? I mean, I have very strong opinions on this. I'm curious what it means for you.
I think in terms of time, it doesn't necessarily feel like something you sit down and learn. It very much feels like an evolution of where you're at, where your job is at that particular time. It just feels like, well, that's the next new thing coming along. I mean, IT is such a fast-moving industry anyway. You always have to understand what the next big thing is. And moving from a lot of the hardware problems that we used to have, I don't think it's taking our jobs away, because I think we just do it slightly differently. I mean, that's the very nature of systems administration, is that over time, what you do as a systems administrator has changed massively. You still need a systems administrator. If you go,
we acknowledge the role is shifting significantly.
Absolutely, it is shifting significantly. What will the systems administrators in 10 years' time need to do? I don't know. And I don't think anyone can confidently sit down and predict what you as a systems administrator in 10 years' time, what you will be doing. I can tell you it will be an evolution of where the cloud is. It will be an evolution of CloudFormation. It will be an evolution of Azure and where they're going with databases. I mean, Oracle Cloud as well. I mean, they're heavily database based. So I think we will see some more specialisation between the different cloud vendors. At the moment, they're all kind of racing to Azure and AWS and Google are kind of racing to the bottom in terms of serverless. But we will see some specialisations come out of that. And I think you'll just end up needing to pick ones to specialise in.
I think the principles of good engineering remain the same, even if the methodologies or deployment choices change.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good afternoon.
Cheers.